The sickening sound of military gear hitting wet mud echoed across Camp Pendleton's obstacle course at 0430 hours. The morning darkness hung heavy over Southern California, broken only by harsh floodlights that turned the training ground into a theater of shadows and harsh white glare. Gunnery Sergeant Mason Carter stood like a monument to Marine Corps tradition, his 6'2" frame casting a long shadow over the smaller figure before him. 15 years of service had carved his features into hard angles, his jaw set with the kind of rigid authority that brooked no argument. Ashley Williams stood motionless in the mud, her 5'6" frame appearing almost childlike next to Carter's imposing presence. Water from the previous night's rain had turned the obstacle course into a swamp, and now her standard-issue backpack lay half-submerged in a particularly deep puddle, its contents already soaking through the canvas. The mud splattered across her fresh utilities, marking her as the morning's chosen target. You think this soft, pathetic excuse for field gear is going to keep you alive in a combat zone? Carter's voice boomed across the training ground, each word calculated to cut deep. His Missouri accent thickened when he was angry, and right now it was pure backwoods contempt. 120 pounds soaking wet, and you want to play Marine? Around them, more than 20 Marines had stopped at their morning PT to watch the spectacle. Some leaned against the pull-up bars, others paused mid-stride on the running track. Their expressions ranged from uncomfortable sympathy to barely concealed amusement. This wasn't the first time Carter had singled out someone he deemed unworthy, but there was something particularly vicious about this morning's display. "Logistics clerk," Carter spat the words like they tasted bitter. His boot nudged the edge of her backpack, pushing it deeper into the mud. "You know what we call people like you in the real Corps? Dead weight, administrative overhead. The reason real warriors have to carry extra ammunition." Ashley's green eyes remained fixed on a point somewhere beyond Carter's shoulder, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't flinch when mud splattered across her face, didn't react when Carter stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. Her breathing remained steady, controlled in a way that should have been Carter's first warning sign. "Nothing to say, Williams?" Carter circled her now, like a predator sizing up prey. "That's right. Keep that mouth shut. Maybe if you stay quiet enough, we'll forget you're even here. That's what you logistics types are good at, right? Being invisible, being irrelevant." Lance Corporal Amber Hayes, standing with the group of observers, shifted uncomfortably. She had arrived at Pendleton just 2 months ago, and while hazing was nothing new in the Marines, this felt different. This felt personal. The small woman in the mud hadn't done anything to deserve this level of humiliation. Hayes took a half step forward, then stopped when Sergeant Connor Walsh shot her a warning look. "Let me paint you a picture, Williams," Carter continued, his voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow made it worse. 2 weeks from now, when you wash out of this program, when you're back behind a desk pushing papers where you belong, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that you couldn't even keep your gear out of the mud. Remember that when real Marines needed someone they could count on, you were standing here, useless as a screen door on a submarine. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of reveille beginning to play across the base. Ashley finally moved, but not in the way anyone expected. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. Instead, she bent down with deliberate precision and retrieved her backpack from the mud. The way she lifted it, compensating perfectly for the added water weight, the way her feet positioned themselves for optimal balance in the slippery mud, these were things only a trained eye would notice. And at 0430 hours, in the dim morning light, no one was looking that closely. She opened the pack and began removing items one by one, checking each piece of equipment with methodical efficiency. Her hands moved with practiced ease, wringing out what could be salvaged, repacking items in a specific order that would allow them to dry while maintaining weight distribution. When she reached her spare uniform, sealed in a waterproof bag that had protected it from the mud, she paused for just a moment. There was something almost ritualistic about the way she handled it, folding it with precise military corners before replacing it. 50 push-ups, Carter barked suddenly. "Right there in the mud. Let's see if those skinny arms can even manage half." Without hesitation, Ashley dropped into position. Her form was textbook perfect, back straight as a board, elbows tucking close to her body with each descent. She moved through the repetitions with mechanical precision, her breathing controlled and measured. 1, 2, 3. The counting in her head was automatic, learned through countless repetitions in places far more challenging than a muddy training ground. By 25, some of the watching Marines had started to pay attention. Her form hadn't deteriorated at all. By 35, even Carter had stopped his pacing to watch. By 40, the subtle shake in her arms was there, but she pushed through it with the kind of mental fortitude that came from facing much worse than muscle fatigue. 45, 48, 50. She held the last position for a beat longer than necessary, then pushed up to standing in one fluid motion. Mud covered her from head to toe, but she stood at perfect attention, eyes forward, waiting for the next command. "Think you're tough now?" Sergeant Connor Walsh had joined Carter, his Boston accent sharp with disdain. Walsh was younger, hungrier, always eager to prove himself as Carter's enforcer. "Bet you learned that from some CrossFit video on YouTube. This ain't a gym, princess. This is the Marines." Ashley's gaze shifted to Walsh for just a moment, and something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, something else entirely. It was the look of someone making a mental note, filing information away for later. Then it was gone, replaced by the same neutral expression she'd maintained throughout the ordeal. Before we dive deeper into Ashley's story, tell us where you're watching from today. Are you a veteran, active military, or someone who supports our troops? Drop your location and service branch in the comments below. Your stories inspire us to keep sharing these incredible tales of hidden heroes who served in the shadows. The mess hall at 0600 hours was a cacophony of clanging trays and overlapping conversations. The large rectangular room could seat 300, but at this early hour, only about 50 Marines were scattered across the long tables. The smell of powdered eggs and overcooked bacon hung in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of industrial coffee that could strip paint. Ashley had changed into a fresh uniform, though traces of mud still clung to her boots, despite her best efforts to clean them. She moved through the chow line with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything, selecting her food without comment, finding an empty table in the corner where she could eat in peace. The bruising on her forearms from the push-ups was already starting to show, purple-green marks that would darken over the coming days. She ate methodically, cutting her food into precise pieces, chewing each bite the exact same number of times. It wasn't OCD, not exactly. It was the eating habit of someone who had learned that meals could be interrupted at any moment, that you might have to move fast with no warning, that controlling what you could control kept you alive when everything else went sideways. Private Ryan Foster approached with two of his buddies, all of them fresh out of basic, still drunk on their newfound status as Marines. Foster was the type who had been picked on in high school and now reveled in being on the other side of the power dynamic. His base still showed acne scars, and he'd grown a mustache that did nothing to hide his weak chin. "Hey, look who it is," Foster announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "The mud wrestler from this morning's entertainment." He carried his tray with exaggerated clumsiness, swinging it wide as he passed Ashley's table. The inevitable happened. Whether by accident or design was impossible to say. His tray tilted, sending orange juice, syrup, and half a plate of eggs cascading onto Ashley's clean uniform. The mess hall went quiet, that particular quality of silence that preceded either laughter or violence. Ashley looked down at the mess spreading across her chest and lap, syrup mixing with egg yolk in an abstract pattern. Foster stood there grinning, waiting for the reaction that would justify whatever came next. But Ashley simply reached for the napkins, beginning to clean herself with the same methodical precision she'd shown with her muddy gear. No cursing, no jumping up in anger, just careful, deliberate movements to minimize the damage. "Oh man, I'm so sorry," Foster said with false concern that fooled no one. "Guess you'll need another uniform change. How many is that today? 2, 3? Maybe logistics should order you extras." His buddies laughed, the sound sharp and mean. Other Marines at nearby tables either looked away or watched with interest, waiting to see if the small woman would finally snap. That was the game, after all. Push until they broke, then mock them for breaking. Master Chief Logan Foster, no relation to the private, observed from across the mess hall, where he sat with other Navy personnel attached to the base. He was there as part of an inter-service training program, coordinating between Navy and Marine operations. His weathered face, marked by 23 years of service including 5 tours in Afghanistan, remained impassive, but his eyes tracked every movement at Ashley's table with the kind of attention that suggested he was seeing more than others. Ashley finished cleaning what she could, then stood up with her ruined tray. She walked past Foster without acknowledging his existence, deposited her tray in the return area, and headed for the door. As she passed Master Chief Foster's table, Their eyes met for just a moment. He saw something there, a flicker of recognition, soldier to soldier, then she was gone. "Did you see that?" One of Foster's buddies laughed. "She didn't even say anything. What a pushover. Probably gonna go cry in the bathroom," Foster added, already forgetting the incident as he dug into his breakfast. But Master Chief Foster wasn't forgetting. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to an old friend at Naval Special Warfare Command. Just a question, nothing official. The response wouldn't come for hours, but when it did, it would change everything. The weapons training area was a sprawling complex of ranges, cleaning stations, and storage buildings. At 0800 hours, the main classroom was filled with Marines attending mandatory weapons qualification updates. The instructor, Corporal Blake Anderson, was one of those Marines who treated weapons knowledge like a religion. He could disassemble and reassemble any standard-issue weapon blindfolded and took personal offense when others couldn't match his expertise. "Today we're reviewing the M4 carbine platform," Anderson announced, his sharp New Jersey accent cutting through the morning drowsiness that still affected some of the Marines. "And since we have some non-combat personnel with us," his eyes found Ashley in the third row, "we'll start with the basics. Really basic. Like, this is the trigger. Basic." The laughter was obligatory rather than genuine. Most of the Marines were tired of the constant harassment, but no one wanted to be the next target, so they played along. Anderson hefted an M4 from the table. "Williams, since you're logistics, you probably don't get much hands-on time with actual weapons. Why don't you come up here and show us what you know? Consider it a learning opportunity." Ashley stood and made her way to the front of the classroom. Her movements were neither eager nor reluctant, just purposeful. She accepted the weapon from Anderson, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, her hands adjusted to its weight with the kind of familiarity that spoke of thousands of repetitions. "Go ahead," Anderson smirked. "Show us how to perform a basic field strip. Take your time. We know this is probably your first time handling a real weapon." Ashley's response was to begin disassembling the weapon. Her movements were smooth, economical, each piece removed and placed on the table in a precise order. But she was holding back, deliberately slowing herself, adding small hesitations that weren't quite natural. It took her 45 seconds to complete the disassembly, a respectable time for someone with basic training, nowhere near the 15 seconds she was capable of. "Not bad for a beginner," Anderson said, though he sounded slightly disappointed that she hadn't fumbled more. "Now reassemble it." As Ashley began putting the weapon back together, her muscle memory nearly betrayed her. Her hands wanted to move faster, to perform the practiced motions that had been drilled into her through endless repetition. She caught herself twice, forcing her movements to remain at amateur speed. But then she made a mistake, or what seemed like a mistake. As she reattached the bolt carrier group, she muttered something under her breath. "Clear the fatal funnel, establish fields of fire." Anderson's head snapped up. "What did you say?" Ashley looked confused, as if she hadn't realized she'd spoken aloud. Nothing. Just remembering the manual." But Anderson knew those phrases. They weren't from any basic training manual. They were from advanced close-quarters battle doctrine, the kind taught to special operations forces. He studied her more carefully now, noting the way she held the weapon, the way her finger naturally indexed along the receiver instead of near the trigger. "Where exactly did you serve before coming here, Williams?" Anderson asked, his tone shifting from mockery to suspicion. "Supply depot in Kuwait," Ashley replied evenly. "Then logistics support at Camp Lejeune." It was a perfectly reasonable service record, boring even, but something about the way she said it, the practiced ease of the response, made Anderson wonder. He'd given the same kind of rehearsed answers when people asked about his time in Iraq, glossing over the parts that kept him awake at night. Captain Daniel Hayes entered the classroom then, his presence immediately commanding attention. Hayes was the kind of officer who had risen through the ranks on a combination of competence and political savvy. He was neither loved nor hated by his subordinates, just respected as someone who got the job done without unnecessary drama. "Williams," he called out, consulting his tablet, "I may need you to brief me on the logistics report for next week's joint operation exercise." Ashley set down the M4 and followed Hayes to the corner of the room. What followed was a masterclass in military logistics. She rattled off supply requirements, transportation schedules, and contingency plans with the kind of detail that suggested either an eidetic memory or extensive preparation. Probably both. Hayes listened with growing interest. He'd expected a basic overview, maybe some fumbling with numbers. Instead, he was getting a comprehensive operational plan that accounted for variables he hadn't even considered. You included provisions for potential weather delays, he noted, scrolling through her report on his tablet, and alternate supply routes if the primary roads are compromised. This is thorough. Just covering the basics, sir, Ashley replied, but Hayes knew this wasn't basic. This was the kind of planning that came from someone who had seen operations go wrong, who had learned the hard way that every contingency needed a backup. He made a mental note to pull her full service record when he got back to his office. The morning progressed with a kind of inevitable momentum. Each interaction added another layer to the mystery that was Ashley Williams. In the base gym at 1000 hours, she was spotted working out alone, her routine focused on functional fitness rather than show. Pull-ups, box jumps, and kettlebell swings, all performed with the kind of intensity that suggested she was training for something specific. It was there that Lance Corporal Amber Hayes first noticed the scars. Ashley's PT shirt had ridden up during a set of pull-ups, revealing her lower back. The scars were numerous and varied, some straight and surgical, others jagged and clearly traumatic. But it was the perfectly round scar just above her left hip that made Hayes' breath catch. She'd seen enough combat footage to recognize a bullet wound when she saw one. Hayes wasn't the only one who noticed. A few other Marines had stopped their workouts to watch, drawn by the unusual sight of the quiet logistics clerk pushing herself through a routine that would challenge most infantry Marines. But when Ashley caught them looking, she simply adjusted her shirt and continued her workout, neither acknowledging their attention nor seeming bothered by it. The afternoon brought more challenges. During a mock combat drill designed to test basic self-defense skills, Ashley was paired with Private First Class Noah Allen, a good-natured kid from Iowa who stood 6 feet tall and had 50 pounds on her. The drill was simple: escape from a rear chokehold. Allen wrapped in his arms around Ashley's neck from behind, applying enough pressure to be realistic but not dangerous. The instructor, Staff Sergeant Paul Raymond, began explaining the proper escape technique to the gathered Marines. But before he could finish his first sentence, Ashley moved. It wasn't the technique Raymond was teaching. Instead, she dropped her weight, twisted her hips, and used Allen's own momentum against him. In less than 2 seconds, Allen was on his back, gasping for air, with Ashley's knee hovering an inch from his throat. She had stopped the motion just before impact, the control more impressive than the takedown itself. The gym went silent. That wasn't a basic self-defense move. That was Krav Maga, or something similar, executed with the kind of precision that came from real-world application, not dojo training. Ashley immediately helped Allen to his feet, apologizing profusely. "I'm sorry, I just reacted. Old training from a self-defense class I took." But Raymond wasn't buying it. He'd been an instructor for 8 years, and he knew the difference between civilian self-defense and combat training. The way she'd moved, the automatic target acquisition of vulnerable points, the controlled violence, it all pointed to something more. "What kind of self-defense class was that, Williams?" Raymond asked carefully. "Just something they offered at the community center back home," Ashley replied, her tone suggesting she didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal about it. By 1500 hours, the entire base was buzzing with rumors about the logistics clerk. Stories grew in the telling, as they always did. The 50 push-ups in the mud became 100. The weapon assembly became a blindfolded speed run. The takedown of Allen became a full combat demonstration. Colonel Ethan Blake, commanding officer of the training facility, was in his office when the intelligence officer, Lieutenant Jasper Cruz, knocked on his door. "Sir, we might have an issue with one of the logistics personnel," Cruz began, setting a tablet on Blake's desk. "Ashley Williams. Her service record is clean, boring even, but when I tried to dig deeper, I hit classified walls. Not restricted, classified. The kind of classification that requires Pentagon approval to access." Blake studied the tablet, frowning. On the surface, Williams's record was exactly what you'd expect from a logistics clerk. Basic training at Fort Jackson, advanced individual training in supply management, assignments to various supply depots and administrative positions. Nothing remarkable, nothing concerning. "Could be a glitch in the system," Blake suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it. "That's what I thought, sir. But then I made some calls. Turns out 3 other people have tried to access her full record in the past 6 hours. Master Chief Foster put in a request through Navy channels. Captain Hayes tried through Marine Corps administration. Even Corporal Anderson attempted to pull her weapons qualification history. All of them hit the same wall. Blake leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. Military records weren't classified without reason. Either Williams was connected to some ongoing investigation, or she was something other than what she appeared to be. "Keep this quiet for now," Blake ordered. "Last thing we need is paranoia spreading through the ranks. But keep an eye on her, discreetly." The sun was setting over Camp Pendleton when the day's final confrontation began. Ashley had stayed late at the supply depot, completing inventory reports that didn't really need to be done until the end of the week. She worked alone in the warehouse, the space lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast long shadows between the towering shelves of equipment. She was reaching for a box on a high shelf when she heard footsteps behind her, multiple sets, moving with the deliberate pace of people who wanted to be heard. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge their presence, just continued with her inventory. "Working late, Williams?" Carter's voice echoed in the empty warehouse. He'd brought backup this time. Connor Walsh, Ryan Foster, Blake Anderson, and Daniel Hayes. Not an official confrontation, just a gathering of concerned Marines checking on their colleague. That's how it would be written up if anyone asked. Ashley finally turned around, clipboard still in hand. She was surrounded, the 5 men forming a loose semicircle that blocked her path to the door. It wasn't quite threatening, not overtly, just intimidating enough to make their point. "We've been talking," Carter continued, moving closer. "Comparing notes about our mysterious logistics clerk. You know what we think? We think you're hiding something. Maybe you're CID, here to investigate us. Maybe you're worse, a spy, gathering intelligence on our operations." "I'm just trying to do my job," Ashley replied quietly. "Your job," Walsh laughed. "Right. A logistics clerk who can field strip and M4 like a weapons instructor. Who knows CQB terminology, who has combat scars. That's some job description." Foster pulled out his phone, already recording. This was going to be good, he thought. Either they'd expose her as a fraud, or she'd break down and confess to whatever she was really doing here. Either way, it would make great content for his social media. "Here's what's going to happen," Carter said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You're going to tell us exactly who you are and why you're really here, or things are going to get uncomfortable." Ashley set down her clipboard with deliberate care. When she looked up, something had changed in her expression. The mask of the quiet logistics clerk was still there, but underneath, something else was beginning to show through. "Gunny," she said, using Carter's rank for the first time, "I really think you should walk away." It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was the kind of warning one professional gives another, a courtesy extended out of respect for the uniform, if not the man wearing it. Carter's face flushed red. "Are you threatening me, Williams?" "No, Gunny. I'm trying to protect you." That's when Walsh made his move. Whether it was planned or just an impulse, he reached out and grabbed Ashley's collar, intending to shake some respect into her. What happened next would be replayed on phone videos, dissected in after-action reports, and discussed in military bars for years to come. But in the moment, it happened so fast that most of the men present couldn't even process what they were seeing. Ashley's left hand came up and trapped Walsh's wrist. Her right elbow connected with his solar plexus, not hard enough to cause serious damage, but with sufficient force to drop him to his knees. She pivoted, using his falling body as a shield, as Foster tried to grab her from behind. A simple foot sweep sent Foster sprawling into a shelf, boxes of supplies cascading down around him. Anderson and Hayes stepped back, hands raised, suddenly very aware that they were dealing with something far beyond a logistics clerk. But Carter, driven by 15 years of pride, and unable to process that he was being outmatched by someone half his size, lunged forward. Ashley moved like water, flowing around his attack. She didn't strike him, didn't hurt him. Instead, she redirected his momentum, sending him stumbling past her. But as he went by, his grasping hand caught her collar, and the sound of tearing fabric filled the warehouse. Her uniform shirt ripped from collar to mid-chest, exposing the black sports bra underneath. But that wasn't what made everyone freeze. It wasn't even the numerous scars that crisscrossed her torso, evidence of wounds that should have been fatal. It was the tattoo on her left shoulder. The Navy SEAL Trident was unmistakable, its eagle clutching a pistol, trident, and anchor. Below it, inked in precise military font, were the letters NESUGU-7 and a date, 05/02/2011. Around it, forming a border, was the SEAL motto in Latin: "The only easy day was yesterday." The warehouse fell absolutely silent. Walsh, still gasping for air on the floor, managed to wheeze out, "Holy cow!" Foster's phone clattered to the ground, still recording as he scrambled backward. That's a SEAL Trident." But Carter's face had gone pale for a different reason. The date on the tattoo, May 2nd, 2011. He knew that date. Everyone in the military knew that date. "Operation Neptune's Spear," he whispered. Ashley stood perfectly still in the center of the warehouse, her torn shirt hanging loose, the tattoo fully visible. She made no move to cover herself, no attempt to explain. She simply waited, watching as understanding dawned on the faces around her. It was Hayes who broke first. Captain Daniel Hayes, who had always prided himself on his military bearing, snapped to attention and rendered a perfect salute. The motion was automatic, drilled into him through years of training. You saluted superior officers, and a Navy SEAL, especially one who had been part of the Bin Laden raid, definitely qualified. "Ghost Unit 7, Anderson breathed, finally understanding what the letters meant. "They don't exist. They're not supposed to exist." But Master Chief Foster, who had been alerted to the confrontation and had just entered the warehouse, knew better. He'd heard whispers during his time at Naval Special Warfare Command. Stories of a unit so classified that even its existence was considered need to know. They were the ones sent on missions that never happened, to places the U.S. was never supposed to be. "Lieutenant Commander Williams," Foster said, his voice carrying the weight of recognition. It wasn't a question. He'd received his answer from his contact hours ago, but regulations had prevented him from acting on it. Now, with her identity exposed, those regulations no longer applied. Ashley's eyes shifted to Foster, and she gave the slightest nod. "Master Chief." Colonel Blake burst through the warehouse doors then, followed by Lieutenant Cruz and a security detail. He'd been alerted to the situation by the base's internal surveillance system, though the cameras hadn't captured everything that had transpired. Blake took in the scene, the 5 men in various states of shock, Ashley standing in the center with her torn uniform and exposed tattoo, and immediately understood that something significant had occurred. "Everyone stand down," Blake commanded. "Williams, or whoever you are, I need to see identification. Now." Ashley reached into her pocket, moving slowly to avoid triggering any defensive reactions from the security detail. She pulled out what looked like a standard military ID, but when she handed it to Blake, he noticed the weight was wrong. It was heavier than normal, made of some composite material he didn't recognize. He scanned the barcode with his tablet, and immediately his screen went black. Then a single message appeared. "Classification level insufficient. Authentication required." A moment later, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but the area code was for Arlington, Virginia, the Pentagon. "Colonel Blake?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and carried the kind of authority that made Blake unconsciously straighten his posture. "Yes, sir. You have one of our operators there. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Williams, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. She's on a classified assignment that you are not cleared to know about. You will provide her with whatever assistance she requires and forget this interaction ever occurred. Is that understood?" "Understood, sir." The line went dead. Blake looked at Ashley with new understanding. "Lieutenant Commander, I apologize for any complications you've encountered during your assignment." Ashley was already moving, retrieving her clipboard and pulling on the jacket she'd left draped over a nearby chair. "No apologies necessary, Colonel, but my cover's blown. I'll need to contact my handler and see if the mission can be salvaged." "What mission?" Carter asked, finally finding his voice. He was still processing the fact that he had been harassing a Navy SEAL for the past week. Ashley paused at the warehouse door, evaluating security protocols and identifying potential insider threats at Marine Corps installations. She looked directly at Foster, who was still recording everything on his phone despite having dropped it earlier. "You'd be surprised how much classified information people share on social media, Private Foster, or how easy it is for foreign agents to infiltrate military bases by targeting personnel with gambling debts, substance abuse problems, or other vulnerabilities." The implications of her words sank in quickly. She hadn't just been evaluating physical security. She had been conducting a comprehensive counterintelligence operation, and they'd all been unwitting subjects. "How many?" Blake asked quietly. "How many have you identified?" "3 confirmed, 2 suspected," Ashley replied, My report was due next week, but obviously that timeline will need to be adjusted. She turned to leave, then stopped. Gunny Carter, you asked me this morning if I thought I was tough. The answer is no. Toughness is what you show when people are watching. I learned a long time ago that the real work happens in the shadows, where no one's keeping score and there are no medals for coming home. We do it anyway because someone has to. As she walked out of the warehouse, Amber Hayes, who had been watching from the doorway, called out, "Ma'am?" "Lieutenant Commander?" Ashley paused. "That date on your tattoo, May 2nd. You were really there, in Abbottabad?" For the first time all day, Ashley smiled. It was small, almost sad. "I wasn't supposed to be. Female SEALs didn't officially exist back then. But when you need someone who can blend in as a Pakistani woman to provide surveillance on the compound, suddenly regulations become flexible." The implications of that statement would take time to fully process. Not only was Ashley one of the first female Navy SEALs, but she had been part of the most significant special operations mission of the 21st century. As news of the confrontation spread across the base, phone videos began circulating through group texts and social media. Within hours, the story had evolved from a simple case of mistaken identity to something much larger. The quiet logistics clerk who had endured a week of harassment without complaint was revealed to be an elite special operator conducting a classified mission. By 2100 hours, Ashley was in Colonel Blake's office, speaking on a secure line to her commanding officer at Naval Special Warfare Command. Blake could only hear her side of the conversation, but it was enough to paint a picture. "Yes, sir. Cover's completely blown." "No, sir. I don't believe it was intentional. Just a culmination of factors. 3 confirmed. Sergeant Phillips in motor pool, Corporal Danvers in communications, and Private Chen in intelligence. They've been feeding information to a foreign contact in exchange for money. Yes, sir. I have documented evidence." "Understood. I'll wrap up here and return to Coronado tomorrow." She hung up and turned to Blake. "My handler wants me to complete the security brief before I leave. Might as well make something useful out of this mess." Blake nodded, then asked the question that had been bothering him all evening. "Why didn't you defend yourself earlier, when Carter and the others were harassing you?" Ashley considered her answer carefully. "Because that was the point, Colonel. To see how far it would go. To identify who would participate, who would stand by, and who would intervene. It's not just about external threats. Sometimes the biggest vulnerabilities come from within." There was a knock on the door, and Master Chief Foster entered. "Lieutenant Commander, I've been asked to escort you to the Navy side of base. We've prepared quarters for you there." Ashley nodded, then turned back to Blake. "Colonel, for what it's worth, you have some good people here. Lance Corporal Hayes tried to intervene multiple times. Sergeant Major Knox questioned the harassment privately. Even some of the junior Marines showed moral courage by refusing to participate. That matters." As she left Blake's office, she found Carter waiting in the hallway. The big Marine looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his actions over the past week. "Lieutenant Commander," he began, his voice formal and careful. "I owe you an apology. My behavior was inexcusable." Ashley studied him for a moment. "Gunny, you're a 15-year Marine with 3 combat deployments. You've earned your place here, but somewhere along the way you forgot that respect is about character, not chromosomes. Maybe use this as a learning opportunity." Carter nodded, swallowing his pride. "Yes, ma'am. Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "This morning, when I threw your gear in the mud, you could have stopped me. Why didn't you?" Ashley's expression was unreadable. "Because I needed to know who you really were, Gunny. The thing about operating in the shadows is that you learn to see people clearly. Their true character comes out when they think no one important is watching." She left Carter standing in the hallway, contemplating the implications of being found wanting by someone he had dismissed as weak. The next morning, at 0600 hours, the entire base was assembled for an unusual formation. Colonel Blake stood at the podium, with Ashley beside him in her full-dress uniform. For the first time, everyone could see her complete ribbon rack, the silver star, bronze stars with Combat V devices, the purple hearts, and the coveted seal Trident that had been hidden under a logistics clerk's facade. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake began, "we've had an unusual week here at Camp Pendleton. What started as a routine personnel assignment turned into something none of us expected. Lieutenant Commander Williams was here on a classified assignment, evaluating our security protocols and identifying potential threats to operational security." He paused, letting that sink in. During her time here, she identified and documented 3 cases of espionage, prevented what could have been a major security breach, and provided invaluable insights into our institutional vulnerabilities. She did this while enduring harassment and discrimination that violated every principle we claim to uphold. Blake turned to Ashley. Lieutenant Commander, on behalf of Camp Pendleton and the Marine Corps, I apologize for the treatment you received. Your professionalism and restraint in the face of unacceptable behavior reflect the highest traditions of naval service. Ashley stepped forward to the microphone. Thank you, Colonel, but I want to be clear about something. This wasn't about me. This was about the culture that allowed it to happen. Every time someone is harassed because they look different, sound different, or don't fit someone's preconceived notion of what a warrior should be, we weaken our force. We lose potential operators, intelligence assets, and leaders because they're driven out by those who confuse tradition with toxicity. She paused, scanning the assembled Marines. I've operated in 13 countries, speak 4 languages, and have skills that took years to develop. But for a week, all anyone here saw was a small woman who didn't belong. How many others with similar potential have we lost because they didn't have classified credentials to fall back on? The formation was dismissed, but small groups lingered, discussing what they'd witnessed. Among them, Amber Hayes approached Ashley as she prepared to leave. Ma'am, I want to apologize for not doing more to help you, Hayes said. You tried, Ashley replied. That's more than most did. Can I ask you something? What's it really like, being a SEAL? Ashley considered the question. It's everything you imagine and nothing like you expect. The physical challenges are real, but they're not the hardest part. The hardest part is the isolation. Operating in units that don't officially exist, completing missions that never happened, losing teammates whose deaths can't be acknowledged. You sacrifice a normal life for the privilege of serving in the shadows. Hayes nodded slowly. Do you think, could someone like me make it? Ashley studied the young Marine, seeing something of herself from years ago. Lance Corporal, the fact that you're asking the question means you're already ahead of most. The SEALs aren't about being the biggest or strongest. They're about being the one who keeps going when everyone else has quit. They're about making the hard choice when it matters, even if no one ever knows you did. As Ashley walked toward the vehicle that would take her back to Naval Base Coronado, she was intercepted by an unexpected group. Carter, Walsh, Foster, Anderson, and Hayes, the 5 men who had confronted her in the warehouse, stood in a line. Carter spoke for the group. Lieutenant Commander, we wanted to apologize properly. What we did was wrong, regardless of who you turned out to be. We violated the core values we swore to uphold. Each man rendered a salute, which Ashley returned crisply. Gentlemen, she said, redemption is always possible for those willing to do the work. Use this experience to be better. The Corps needs leaders who protect all their Marines, not just the ones who look like them. As her vehicle pulled away from Camp Pendleton, Ashley allowed herself a moment of reflection. The mission had been compromised, but perhaps something more valuable had been accomplished. 3 spies had been identified, yes, but more importantly, a mirror had been held up to an institution that needed to see its own flaws. Her phone buzzed with a secure message from her handler at Ghost Unit 7. New assignment, wheels up in 3 hours, location classified. The message was typically brief, offering no details about what came next. But there was a second message, this one from Admiral Sarah Chen, one of the highest-ranking women in naval special warfare. Heard about Pendleton. Sometimes the most important missions are the ones we don't plan. Well done. Through the vehicle's window, Ashley could see the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, in places most Americans would never know about, other operators were conducting missions that would never make the news. They would succeed or fail in silence, their victories uncelebrated, their sacrifices unrecognized. But that was the nature of the shadows. You didn't serve there for glory or recognition. You served because someone had to stand watch in the darkness, ensuring others could sleep peacefully in the light. The Camp Pendleton incident would become legend in military circles, shared in bars and briefing rooms as an example of why assumptions were dangerous and respect was earned through actions, not appearances. Videos of the warehouse confrontation would circulate through training programs as a case study in both what not to do and what exceptional operators were capable of. But for Ashley Williams, it was just another mission in a career built on being underestimated. As the vehicle approached the gates of Naval Base Coronado, she was already shifting her focus to whatever came next. Because in the world of special operations, there was always another mission, another threat, another shadow that needed investigating. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the tarmac at North Island Naval Air Station as Ashley arrived for her departure briefing. The facility was home to Naval Special Warfare Command, and unlike Camp Pendleton, everyone here knew exactly what the Trident on her uniform represented. She was met by Commander Jacob Mitchell, a former SEAL Teams operator who now coordinated operations for Ghost Unit 7. His face bore the scars of too many missions in too many places that didn't officially exist. "Heard you caused quite a stir with the Marines," Mitchell said, leading her into a secure briefing room. "My cover was blown, sir. Seemed pointless to maintain the fiction after that." Mitchell pulled up a classified file on the secure terminal. "Actually, your actions at Pendleton have opened some doors. The 3 individuals you identified were part of a larger network. The intelligence you gathered is being used to roll up similar operations at 6 other installations." He showed her a map with red markers at various military bases across the country. "We've been trying to identify this network for 2 years. You accomplished in a week what traditional counterintelligence couldn't do in 24 months. Sometimes being underestimated is the best cover," Ashley replied. "Speaking of which," Mitchell continued, pulling up another file, "your next assignment will require similar skills. We need someone who can blend in, appear non-threatening, while gathering intelligence on a potential threat." The file showed a photograph of a man Ashley recognized immediately. Marcus Volkov, former Spetsnaz operator turned arms dealer. He had been linked to several attacks on American forces in Syria, but had always managed to stay one step ahead of capture. "Volkov is planning something big," Mitchell explained. "We have intelligence suggesting he's trying to acquire chemical weapons from Syrian stockpiles. We need someone who can get close to him without raising suspicion." Ashley studied the file, already planning her approach. Volkov had a weakness for American military technology and often tried to recruit former service members for his operations. A disgraced female sailor, bitter about her treatment and looking for revenge, might be exactly the kind of asset he'd want to cultivate. "When do I leave?" she asked. "Tomorrow, but first, there's something else." Mitchell pulled out a metal case. The Secretary of the Navy wanted this presented quietly, no ceremony, just recognition for exceptional service. Inside was the Navy Cross, the second highest decoration for valor in combat. The citation was heavily redacted, but Ashley could read between the black lines. It was for an operation in Yemen 2 years ago, one that had saved an entire SEAL platoon from ambush, but had never been publicly acknowledged. "They wanted to give you the Medal of Honor," Mitchell said quietly, "but that would have required public disclosure of the operation. This was the compromise." Ashley accepted the medal without fanfare. Awards had never been why she served. They were just pieces of metal that represented moments when everything had gone wrong, and somehow she'd helped make them right. That evening, Ashley found herself at the quarterdeck bar, a quiet establishment frequented by Naval Special Warfare personnel. It was one of the few places where operators could relax without having to explain themselves or watch what they said. She was nursing a beer when someone sat down beside her. She didn't need to look to know who it was. The slight smell of gunpowder and sand that never quite washed out gave him away. "Heard you've been terrorizing Marines," said Master Chief James Thompson, her former platoon chief from SEAL Team 6. "They started it," Ashley replied, allowing herself a small smile. Thompson laughed, a rare sound from the perpetually serious operator. "Also heard you're taking on Volkov. That's a dangerous game, even for you." "They all are these days." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. 2 warriors who had seen too much but couldn't imagine doing anything else. "You know," Thompson said eventually, "what you did at Pendleton, it mattered. Not the counterintelligence stuff, though that was good work, but showing them that their assumptions were wrong, making them confront their biases. That's the kind of victory that echoes." Ashley took another sip of her beer. "It shouldn't have been necessary. We're supposed to be better than that. Supposed to be and are remain 2 different things, but every time someone like you proves them wrong, we get a little closer to what we're supposed to be." Thompson stood to leave, but paused. "Watch your 6 with Volkov. He's smart, paranoid, and completely ruthless. Don't let him get close enough to figure out who you really are." After Thompson left, Ashley remained at the bar, thinking about the past week. From being humiliated in the mud at Camp Pendleton to preparing for an infiltration of an international arms dealers organization. It was a strange life, but it was hers. Her phone buzzed with a message from Amber Hayes. "Ma'am, I put in my application for Buds today. Wanted you to know. Whether I make it or not, thank you for showing me what's possible." Ashley typed back a simple response. "The only easy day was yesterday. Good luck, Lance Corporal." As she left the bar and headed back to her quarters to prepare for tomorrow's mission, Ashley thought about all the other women who would come after her. The ones who would face the same discrimination, the same assumptions, the same barriers. Some would break through, like Hayes might. Others would be driven away by cultures that couldn't see past their own prejudices. But change was coming, one confrontation at a time, one proven wrong assumption at a time, one qualified woman at a time. It would be slow, it would be painful, and it would be resisted every step of the way. But it was inevitable, because excellence couldn't be denied forever, no matter what package it came in. The secure briefing room at Naval Base Coronado felt different at 0500 hours the next morning. Ashley sat across from three individuals she hadn't expected to see again so soon: Colonel Ethan Blake, Master Chief Logan Foster, and, surprisingly, Gunnery Sergeant Mason Carter. They had been flown in overnight on a priority military transport, their presence requested by Admiral Sarah Chen herself. "Lieutenant Commander Williams," Admiral Chen began via secure video link from the Pentagon, her weathered face filling the large screen at the end of the room. "The situation at Camp Pendleton has revealed something more significant than we initially understood. The three individuals you identified were part of a cell we've been tracking for 18 months. Ashley straightened in her chair, immediately understanding the implications. If they had been tracking the cell that long without success, it meant the enemy had been operating with near impunity on American military installations. "The methods you employed," Chen continued, "particularly your ability to operate while being actively discriminated against, have proven more effective than traditional counterintelligence approaches. We want to expand this operation." Blake leaned forward. "Ma'am, with respect, what exactly are you proposing?" Chen's expression hardened. "I'm proposing we stop treating security threats and cultural problems as separate issues. Lieutenant Commander Williams proved they're interconnected. Those who are willing to betray their country are often the same ones who abuse their power over subordinates." She pulled up a classified presentation showing data from 12 military installations. Red markers indicated confirmed security breaches, yellow showed suspected insider threats, and blue marked locations with documented harassment issues. The overlap was striking. "Sergeant Phillips in the motor pool," Ashley said, studying the data. "He wasn't just selling information. He was using his position to coerce female mechanics into relationships. Corporal Danvers was embezzling funds meant for communication equipment upgrades while simultaneously running an underground gambling ring that targeted junior enlisted." Carter shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd known both men, had even considered Phillips a friend. The revelation that they were not just traitors but predators shook something fundamental in his worldview. "This is why we need a new approach," Admiral Chen continued. "Lieutenant Commander Williams will be leading a joint task force, Operation Silent Shield. The mission is to identify and eliminate insider threats across military installations, while simultaneously addressing the cultural issues that allow these threats to flourish." Master Chief Foster spoke up. "Admiral, what's my role in this?" "You'll be Lieutenant Commander Williams's liaison with Naval Special Warfare. Your experience and connections will be invaluable." Chen turned her attention to Carter. "Gunnery Sergeant, you're being offered a choice. You can return to Camp Pendleton and pretend this week never happened, or you can join this task force and help fix the problems you were unknowingly part of." Carter didn't hesitate. "I'm in, ma'am. I owe Lieutenant Commander Williams that much. More than that, actually." Ashley studied Carter carefully. "Gunny, this isn't about owing anyone anything. Can you handle taking orders from someone you spent a week trying to break?" "Respectfully, ma'am, you already broke me," Carter replied with unexpected honesty. "Everything I thought I knew about strength, about what makes a warrior, you proved wrong. I've got 15 years of habits to unlearn. Might as well start now." The briefing continued for another 2 hours, covering operational parameters, security protocols, and the extensive network they would be investigating. By the time it concluded, Ashley had a team of 12 specialists assigned to her, including cyber warfare experts, psychological operations specialists, and traditional investigators. As they prepared to leave the briefing room, Blake pulled Ashley aside. "Lieutenant Commander, I need to know something. During your week at Pendleton, you gathered intelligence on everyone, including me. What did you find?" Ashley considered her response carefully. "You're a good officer, Colonel, but you have a blind spot. You see the military as a meritocracy where competence naturally rises to the top. That blindness allowed predators to operate under your nose because they were good at their jobs in ways you could measure." Blake absorbed this criticism without defensiveness. "How do I fix it?" "Start listening to the people who don't usually speak up. The lance corporals who request transfers without explaining why. The female Marines who suddenly change their routines to avoid certain areas. The patterns are there if you're willing to see them." 3 days later, Operation Silent Shield officially commenced. Ashley's first target was Fort Hood, where intelligence suggested a significant security breach was imminent. She arrived under cover as a contractor conducting routine administrative reviews, accompanied by a small team that included Carter and Foster. The base was massive, home to over 40,000 soldiers. Finding specific threats among that population would be like finding needles in a haystack, except the needles were actively trying to hide, and the haystack was protected by bureaucracy and institutional inertia. Ashley set up operations in a nondescript office building, using her contractor credentials to access personnel files and financial records. What she found in the first 48 hours was disturbing. Unusual patterns of leave requests, soldiers with inexplicable wealth increases, and a network of relationships that suggested coordinated activity. "Ma'am, you need to see this," Carter said, entering her office with a tablet. He'd been reviewing security footage from the base's motor pools and had noticed something unusual. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 0200 hours, the same 3 vehicles leave the maintenance area. They return exactly 90 minutes later. Ashley studied the footage. The vehicles were standard military issue, but their late-night excursions were definitely not standard. "Can you track where they go?" "Already did. They drive to a warehouse off base, stay for exactly 1 hour, then return. The warehouse is leased to a shell company that doesn't seem to actually do anything." This was exactly the kind of pattern that traditional security sweeps missed. It wasn't obviously criminal, just unusual enough to warrant investigation. Ashley assembled her team for a surveillance operation that night. At 0145 hours, Ashley's team was in position around the warehouse. She watched through night vision goggles as the 3 vehicles arrived on schedule. What emerged from them made her blood run cold. Soldiers in uniform were unloading crates from the vehicles, crates that bore U.S. military markings but were being transferred to civilians who definitely weren't American. "Those are weapons shipments," Foster whispered over the comms. "They're selling military hardware." But Ashley noticed something else. Among the civilians was a face she recognized from intelligence briefings. Dmitry Volkov, Marcus Volkov's younger brother, and his primary operations coordinator in North America. This wasn't just weapons theft. It was directly connected to the network she'd been assigned to infiltrate. "Hold positions," Ashley commanded. "We need to know how deep this goes before we move." Over the next hour, they documented the entire transaction. 12 soldiers were involved, including 2 officers. The weapons being sold included next-generation night vision equipment, encrypted communication devices, and enough small arms to equip a small militia. When the transaction concluded and the vehicles departed, Ashley made a decision that went against standard protocol. Instead of immediately reporting the breach and arresting those involved, she chose to dig deeper. These soldiers were cogs in a larger machine, and she wanted the whole mechanism. The next morning, Ashley called a meeting with the base's senior leadership, including Major General Patricia Rodriguez, the post commander. Rodriguez was a decorated officer with 30 years of service, known for running a tight ship and having zero tolerance for misconduct. "General, what I'm about to share with you is classified at the highest levels," Ashley began. Her contractor cover now dropped. She displayed her true credentials, watching Rodriguez's eyes widen at the Ghost Unit 7 designation. "We've identified a significant security breach on your base. 12 of your soldiers are involved in selling weapons to foreign agents, but that's just the surface. This connects to a larger network that spans multiple installations." Rodriguez's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, and finally, cold determination. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to do nothing. Let them continue their operations while we trace the network to its source. But I also need your help identifying other vulnerable points in your command structure." Rodriguez agreed, and over the next week, Ashley's investigation expanded exponentially. The weapons theft was connected to a drug distribution ring, which was connected to a human trafficking operation that targeted female soldiers. Each thread led to more threads, creating a web of corruption that had infected every level of the base's operations. It was Carter who made the breakthrough. He'd been interviewing junior enlisted soldiers, using his newfound awareness to pick up on subtle cues he would have previously missed. A young private, Jessica Huang, mentioned offhandedly that she'd changed her jogging route because she kept running into a group of NCOs who made her uncomfortable. "Did they threaten you?" Carter asked gently, a far cry from his previous interrogation's style. "Not exactly," Huang replied. "They just knew things. Where I was from, from, where my family lived. One of them mentioned my little sister by name, said it would be a shame if something happened to her." Carter brought this information to Ashley immediately. It suggested that someone was gathering personal information on soldiers, possibly for blackmail or coercion. Ashley cross-referenced Huang's information with others who had reported similar experiences and found a pattern. All of them had refused to participate in seemingly innocent activities: poker games, investment opportunities, dating apps specifically for military personnel. They're talent scouting, Ashley realized, testing who can be corrupted and identifying those who can't. The ones who refuse become potential threats, so they gather leverage on them. The investigation culminated 2 weeks after Ashley's arrival at Fort Hood. Working with federal authorities, they executed simultaneous raids on 17 locations, arresting 43 individuals, including 6 officers. The amount of intelligence gathered was staggering, providing leads on similar operations at bases across the country and overseas. But the real victory came in the aftermath. General Rodriguez, shaken by how badly she'd misread her own command, implemented sweeping reforms. Anonymous reporting systems were established. Female soldiers were given direct channels to report harassment that bypassed the chain of command, and regular psychological evaluations were mandated for anyone in a position of authority. Ashley was in the base's gym at 0600 hours, finishing her morning workout, when she received an encrypted message on her secure phone. It was from Admiral Chen, and it contained just 4 words: "Volkov knows about you." Her blood ran cold. If Marcus Volkov knew about her involvement in shutting down his brother's operation, her upcoming infiltration mission was compromised before it began. Worse, she and her team were now potential targets. She immediately initiated security protocols, alerting her team to potential threats. Within minutes, Foster reported suspicious activity near their operations center. Carter confirmed unusual vehicle movements around base perimeters. They were being surveilled. "Pack everything," Ashley commanded. "We're leaving, now." As they prepared for emergency extraction, Ashley's mind was already working through the implications. Volkov knowing about her could be a disaster, or it could be an opportunity. If he thought she was a threat, he might make mistakes trying to eliminate her. If she could control the narrative, make him think she was something she wasn't, she might still be able to get close to him. The extraction was smooth, a testament to the team's training. Within 4 hours, they were on a military transport heading back to Coronado. But Ashley knew this was just a tactical withdrawal. The war against Volkov and his network was far from over. Back at Naval Special Warfare Command, Ashley stood before a gathering of the Navy's highest-ranking officers. Her presentation on Operation Silent Shield had drawn attention from the highest levels of military leadership. The success at Fort Hood had proven that her unconventional methods could produce extraordinary results. "Lieutenant Commander Williams," began Admiral James Morrison, Chief of Naval Operations, "what you've accomplished in the past 3 weeks exceeds what traditional counterintelligence has managed in 3 years. We want to expand Silent Shield to all branches of the military." Ashley stood at attention, processing the magnitude of what was being proposed. "Sir, that would require significant resources and personnel. More importantly, it would require cultural changes that many will resist." "Resistance is expected," Morrison replied, "but the alternative is allowing our military to be compromised from within. The connection between discrimination, corruption, and security threats that you've identified cannot be ignored." Vice Admiral Catherine Hayes, Director of Naval Intelligence, added her perspective. "We've analyzed your methods, particularly your ability to operate while facing discrimination. It's given us insights into vulnerabilities we never knew existed. Officers who abuse their power over subordinates are statistically more likely to abuse their positions in other ways. The meeting continued for 3 hours, with Ashley providing detailed recommendations for implementing Silent Shield across the Department of Defense. By its conclusion, she had been given authority to recruit a team of 200 specialists and a budget that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. As she left the meeting, Ashley was intercepted by someone she hadn't expected to see, Amber Hayes from Camp Pendleton. The Lance Corporal was in dress blues, having been flown in specifically for this meeting. "Ma'am," Hayes said, snapping into attention and saluting. Ashley returned the salute. "Lance Corporal, what brings you to Coronado?" "I've been accepted to the Marine Corps Special Operations Command Assessment course. But before I go, I wanted to thank you. What you showed me at Pendleton, it changed everything." Ashley studied the young Marine, seeing the determination that had replaced the uncertainty from just weeks ago. "Lance Corporal, you're about to enter one of the most challenging selection processes in the military. Many will tell you that you don't belong, that you're not strong enough. Remember that strength comes in many forms." Hayes nodded, then pulled something from her pocket. It was a challenge coin, but not just any coin. It bore the insignia of Force Recon, one of the Marine Corps' elite units. "Sergeant Major Knox wanted you to have this," Hayes explained. "He said to tell you that Force Recon remembers those who pave the way for others." Ashley accepted the coin, understanding its significance. Knox had been one of the few who had questioned the harassment she faced, and now he was acknowledging her role in creating opportunities for others. That evening, Ashley found herself back at the quarterdeck bar. But this time, she wasn't alone. Her new team had gathered for an informal meeting before their next deployment. The group was diverse: former special operators, intelligence analysts, cyber warfare specialists, and, surprisingly, Gunnery Sergeant Carter. "So, what's our next target?" asked Lieutenant Maria Sanchez, a former Air Force combat controller who had joined Silent Shield after witnessing similar issues in her branch. "Joint Base Lewis McCord," Ashley replied. "Intelligence suggests a major security breach is being planned. Someone's going to attempt to steal classified drone technology." Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, a former DevGru operator like Ashley, leaned forward. "Connected to Volkov? Everything's connected to Volkov these days. He's building a network that could compromise our entire military infrastructure. But he made a mistake letting us know he's aware of our operations. Now we can use that against him." The conversation was interrupted by Ashley's secure phone buzzing. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the encryption signature indicated it was from within the intelligence community. "Lieutenant Commander Williams?" The voice was unfamiliar, processed through voice modulation software. "Who is this?" "Someone who shares your interest in Marcus Volkov. I have information that might be valuable to your operation, but I need guarantees." Ashley stepped outside for privacy, the cool California evening a stark contrast to the warmth of the bar. "What kind of guarantees?" "Protection, extraction, new identity, the full package. That depends on the quality of your information." There was a pause, then. "Volkov isn't just stealing weapons. He's recruiting American special operators, offering them 10 times their military salary to train his private army. And some are taking him up on it." This was worse than Ashley had imagined. If American-trained special operators were working for Volkov, every tactical advantage the U.S. military possessed could be compromised. "How do you know this?" "Because I'm one of his recruiters, or was. I want out, but I know too much for him to let me leave alive." Ashley made a quick decision. "Tomorrow, 1300 hours, the Santa Monica Pier. Come alone. If your information checks out, we'll protect you. How will I recognize you?" "You won't need to. I'll recognize you." The line went dead. Ashley returned to the bar to find her team engaged in animated discussion about tactics and procedures. Carter was arguing with Thompson about urban warfare techniques, their previous antagonism replaced by professional respect. It was a reminder that people could change, that redemption was possible for those willing to do the work. "Listen up," Ashley announced, getting everyone's attention. "We might have an asset who can give us inside information on Volkov's operation, but it could also be a trap. I need volunteers for a high-risk extraction tomorrow." Every hand in the room went up without hesitation. The next day at 12:45 hours, Ashley was positioned on the Santa Monica Pier, surrounded by tourists and locals enjoying the California sunshine. To anyone watching, she looked like just another civilian in jeans and a light jacket, perhaps waiting for friends. But her team was scattered throughout the area, ready to respond to any threat. At exactly 1300 hours, a woman approached the designated meeting spot. Ashley recognized her immediately from intelligence files. Captain Diana Chen, no relation to Admiral Chen, a former Army Special Forces intelligence officer who had disappeared 6 months ago. She was presumed dead, but here she was, very much alive, and apparently working for the enemy. Ashley approached carefully, aware that this could still be an elaborate trap. Captain Chen? Diana spun around, her hand moving instinctively toward where a weapon would normally be holstered. You're Lieutenant Commander Williams. I've heard about you. Volkov has a price on your head. How much am I worth? $5 million. 10 if you're brought in alive. Ashley processed this information calmly. Being wanted dead or alive by an international arms dealer was actually a sign she was doing something right. You said you have information. Diana looked around nervously. Not here. Too exposed. Volkov has people everywhere. Ashley activated her comm unit with a subtle touch. All units, prepare for mobile extraction. We're moving. Within seconds, 2 SUVs appeared at the curb. Ashley guided Diana into one while her team provided security. They were on the road within 30 seconds, heading toward a safe house in the San Fernando Valley. During the drive, Diana began sharing what she knew. Volkov's operation is bigger than you think. He's not just stealing weapons or recruiting operators. He's planning something specific, something that will fundamentally change the balance of power. What kind of operation? He calls it Project Prometheus. He's going to simultaneously attack 5 major military installations, steal classified technology, and broadcast evidence of American war crimes that he's fabricated. The goal is to destroy America's military credibility while establishing himself as a major player in international affairs. Ashley felt her blood run cold. If Volkov succeeded, it could destabilize global security for decades. At the safe house, Diana provided detailed intelligence on Volkov's organization. She had names, dates, locations, and most importantly, she had codes. Access codes to Volkov's communication network, financial systems, and operational databases. Why betray him now? Foster asked, studying Diana with the suspicion of someone who'd seen too many double agents. Because I discovered what he really is, Diana replied. I thought I was working for someone who wanted to balance global power, prevent American hegemony. But Volkov doesn't care about balance. He's a chaos agent. He wants to watch the world burn so he can rule over the ashes. Ashley spent the next 6 hours debriefing Diana, extracting every piece of information about Volkov's operation. The picture that emerged was terrifying in its scope. Volkov had assets in dozens of countries, thousands of personnel, and resources that rivaled small nations. But he also had weaknesses. His paranoia made him centralize control, creating single points of failure. His ego led him to take unnecessary risks, and his recruitment of American personnel had created a trail that Ashley could follow. There's something else, Diana said as the debriefing concluded. Volkov knows about Ghost Unit 7. Not everything, but enough. He's specifically targeting members of your unit. How many members does he think we have? He believes there are 12 of you, all women, all operating independently. Ashley kept her expression neutral, but internally she was calculating. If Volkov believed Ghost Unit 7 was larger than it actually was, that misconception could be useful. That night, Ashley convened an emergency meeting with Admiral Chen via secure video link. The intelligence Diana had provided had been verified through multiple sources. Project Prometheus was real, and it was scheduled to launch in 30 days. Lieutenant Commander, we're activating all Silent Shield resources, Admiral Chen announced. You have carte blanche to stop this threat. Whatever you need, whoever you need, it's yours. Ashley had never been given this level of authority before. It was both empowering and terrifying. The weight of responsibility for preventing a global catastrophe now rested on her shoulders. Ma'am, I need to do something that goes against every protocol we have, Ashley said. I need to let Volkov capture me. The Admiral's expression sharpened. Explain. He wants me alive because he thinks I can lead him to the rest of Ghost Unit 7. If I let myself be captured, I can get inside his operation, identify the key players, and dismantle it from within. That's suicide, Williams. Not if my team is tracking me, not if we control the narrative. Diana has given us access to his systems. We can manipulate what he thinks he knows, make him overconfident. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. If I approve this, and that's a big if, what's your extraction plan? When Volkov initiates Project Prometheus, his attention will be divided among 5 targets. That's when my team strikes. We take him down and stop the attack simultaneously. It was audacious, risky, and had a dozen points of potential failure. It was also exactly the kind of operation Ghost Unit 7 was created for. You have 72 hours to prepare, Chen said finally. After that, we're going with conventional military response, regardless of the consequences. 3 days later, Ashley was in Los Angeles, deliberately exposing herself to surveillance she knew was connected to Volkov's network. She had sent her team ahead to establish positions near Volkov's suspected base of operations in Nevada. Everything depended on Volkov taking the bait. She didn't have to wait long. As she left a coffee shop in Venice Beach, a van pulled up beside her. Before she could react, several men had grabbed her, injecting her with a sedative. As consciousness faded, she activated the subdermal tracker that would allow her team to follow her anywhere in the world. When Ashley woke, she was in a concrete cell with no windows and a single fluorescent light. Her hands were zip-tied, but not so tightly that she couldn't eventually work free if needed. Whoever had processed her was professional but not paranoid enough to search for subdermal implants. The door opened, and Marcus Volkov himself entered. He was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'10", with the lean build of a runner rather than a fighter, but his eyes were what commanded attention, cold and calculating, like a predator that had learned to mimic human emotion without feeling it. "Lieutenant Commander Ashley Williams," he said, his Russian accent barely detectable, "the ghost who's been haunting my operations. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me?" Ashley remained silent, playing the role of the captured soldier, refusing to cooperate with interrogation. Volkov pulled up a chair, sitting just outside of her reach. "Your silence won't help you here. I know all about Ghost Unit 7. 12 female operators, the best America has to offer. You're going to tell me where the others are." "I work alone," Ashley said, speaking for the first time. Volkov laughed. "Please. Your government isn't creative enough to have just one of you. They always build redundancy into their systems. No, you're part of something bigger, and you're going to help me destroy it." For the next 12 hours, Volkov tried various interrogation techniques. Nothing physically harmful, he was too smart for that. Instead, he tried psychological manipulation, showing her fabricated evidence that her team had abandoned her, that Admiral Chen had disavowed her existence, that she was alone and forgotten. Ashley played her part, showing just enough vulnerability to make Volkov think his methods were working, while secretly gathering intelligence on his operation. She counted footsteps in the hallway, noted shift changes, observed the types of weapons his guards carried. On day 2 of her captivity, Volkov made a mistake. He brought her to his operational command center, wanting to show off the scope of his organization. The room was filled with monitors showing feeds from the 5 target bases, detailed maps of security protocols, and most importantly, a countdown timer showing 26 days until Project Prometheus. "You see," Volkov said proudly, "your military installations are already compromised. I have people inside each base, ready to execute when I give the signal. Your capture was actually fortunate timing. You'll have a front row seat to watch American military might crumble." Ashley memorized everything she saw, every face in the room, every computer screen, every map on the wall. Her eidetic memory, one of the reasons she'd been selected for special operations, cataloged it all for later use. That night, alone in her cell, Ashley began working on the zip ties. She could escape now if she wanted, but that wasn't the plan. She needed Volkov to remain overconfident, to believe he had won. Only then would he make the mistakes that would allow her team to dismantle his entire network. On day 3, an unexpected visitor arrived. Dmitry Volkov, Marcus's younger brother, the one whose weapons trafficking operation Ashley had shut down at Fort Hood. He looked at her with undisguised hatred. "You cost me $40 million, he snarled. "And more importantly, you cost me credibility with my brother." Ashley could see the dynamic now. Dmitry was trying to prove himself, living in his older brother's shadow. That resentment could be useful. "Your brother doesn't respect you," Ashley said quietly. "He never has. You're just another tool to him, like everyone else." Dmitry's face flushed with anger, but also something else. Recognition. She'd hit a nerve. Before he could respond, Marcus returned. "Leave us, Dmitry, now." The younger Volkov left, but not before shooting Ashley a look that suggested her words had taken root. Marcus studied her carefully. "Trying to turn my brother against me? How pedestrian. I expected better from Ghost Unit 7. I told you, I work alone. Yes, you keep saying that, but you see, I've done my research. He pulled out a tablet, showing surveillance photos of several female military personnel. These women, all exceptional operators, all mysteriously disappeared from regular units around the same time you did. I believe they're your teammates. Ashley recognized some of the faces. They were indeed exceptional operators, but none were part of Ghost Unit 7. Volkov's intelligence was good, but not perfect. She could use this. You're right, she said, allowing defeat to creep into her voice. Those are my teammates. Volkov's eyes lit up with triumph. I knew it. Now, you're going to help me find them. For the next week, Ashley fed Volkov carefully crafted disinformation. She gave him locations where the fictitious Ghost Unit 7 members might be, sending his resources on wild goose chases across the globe. Meanwhile, her real team was positioning themselves for the strike that would bring down his entire operation. The break came on day 10 of her captivity. Dmitry Volkov approached her cell late at night, when most of the guards were focused on other areas. You were right, he said quietly. My brother doesn't respect anyone. He's planning to eliminate me after Prometheus succeeds. I found the termination order on his private server. Ashley saw her opportunity. Help me stop him, and I'll ensure you get immunity. Full protection, new identity, the whole package. Dmitry hesitated, torn between family loyalty and self-preservation. He's my brother. Who's planning to kill you? Family doesn't mean much to someone like Marcus. You know that. It took another 2 days of careful manipulation, but eventually Dmitry agreed to help. He provided Ashley with communication access, allowing her to coordinate with her team without Marcus knowing. The plan was complex but elegant. When Marcus initiated Project Prometheus, believing his victory was assured, Ashley's team would simultaneously strike all 5 targets while she neutralized the command center from within. Dmitry would disable security systems at the crucial moment, creating windows of opportunity for the strikes. D-Day arrived with tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Ashley remained in her cell, playing the defeated prisoner, while her team moved into final positions. At exactly 1500 hours, Marcus Volkov entered the command center and initiated Project Prometheus. Begin Phase 1, he commanded, and across 5 military installations, his embedded agents began their attacks. But they were met with unexpected resistance. Ashley's intelligence had allowed military security forces to identify and isolate the threats. What Volkov thought would be coordinated strikes turned into ambushes against his own people. In the command center, chaos erupted as reports came in of failed operations. Marcus turned to his security monitors, trying to understand what was happening when the screens went dark. Dmitry had executed his part of the plan, disabling the compound's security systems. Ashley, who had freed herself from her restraints hours ago, burst from her cell. She moved through the compound with lethal efficiency, using her memorized knowledge of the layout to avoid or neutralize guards. Her destination was the command center, where Marcus Volkov was just beginning to realize the magnitude of his failure. She entered to find Marcus frantically trying to restore communications with his teams. He spun around when he heard her, reaching for the pistol at his hip, but Ashley was faster. Her hand-to-hand combat training, honed through years of special operations, made the confrontation brief and decisive. You never had Ghost Unit 7, Ashley said as she secured Marcus with his own zip ties. It was only ever me. But you were so convinced of your own brilliance that you created phantom enemies to chase. Around them, the compound shook as Ashley's team breached the perimeter. Navy SEALs fast-roped from helicopters while Marine Force recon units stormed through the main gates. The entire operation was over in less than 20 minutes. In the aftermath, standing in the ruins of Volkov's command center, Ashley received a call from Admiral Chen. Outstanding work, Lieutenant Commander. Project Prometheus has been completely neutralized. All 5 installations are secure, and we've captured over 200 of Volkov's operatives. But Ashley's mind was already moving to the next threat. Volkov had been stopped, but he was just one player in a larger game. The vulnerabilities he'd exploited still existed, waiting for the next enemy to discover them. 2 weeks later, Ashley stood in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, receiving the Distinguished Service Medal from the Secretary of Defense. It was a public ceremony, unusual for someone whose operations typically remained classified. But the threat Volkov had represented required a public response, a show of strength to deter others who might attempt similar operations. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Williams represents the best of American military service, the secretary announced to the gathered crowd. Her courage, intelligence, and dedication prevented a catastrophe that could have changed the course of history. But Ashley barely heard the words. She was thinking about Amber Hayes, who had just completed Marine Special Operations selection, about Carter, who was now leading cultural reform initiatives across the Marine Corps, about Diana Chen, who was using her inside knowledge to help dismantle other extremist networks. After the ceremony, Ashley found herself in a quiet corner with Admiral Sarah Chen, who had flown in from California for the event. "So, what's next for you, Lieutenant Commander?" the Admiral asked. "Ghost Unit 7 still has work to do," Ashley replied. "Volkov proved that our enemies are evolving. We need to evolve too." Chen nodded. "I'm expanding the program. Not more operators like you. That would be impossible. But support structures, intelligence networks, resources that will allow you to operate more effectively. I have some recommendations for recruitment," Ashley said, thinking of the people she'd met during recent operations who had shown the kind of potential Ghost Unit 7 needed. "Send me the list. But first, take some leave. You've earned it." Ashley smiled slightly. "With respect, Admiral, I don't think our enemies take leave." As she left the Pentagon, Ashley's secure phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number, but the encryption signature was military grade. "The Shadow War continues. Are you ready for the next mission? Phantom." Ashley knew that code name. It was someone from her past, someone who was supposed to be dead. But in the world of special operations, death was sometimes just another form of cover. She typed back a simple response. "Ghost Unit 7 is always ready." The setting sun cast long shadows across Washington, D.C. as Ashley made her way to a waiting vehicle. She had 3 days to investigate who Phantom really was before her next official assignment began. 3 days to determine if this was a new ally or a new threat. As the vehicle pulled away from the Pentagon, Ashley allowed herself a moment of reflection. From the muddy obstacle course at Camp Pendleton to the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, it had been a journey that defied every expectation and broke every barrier. But she knew this was just the beginning. The shadows were full of threats that conventional forces couldn't handle, enemies who operated outside the normal rules of warfare. Someone had to stand watch in those shadows, protecting those who would never know they were in danger. A year later, Ghost Unit 7 had become something more than just Ashley Williams operating alone. While she remained the only official operator, she had built a network of assets, allies, and resources that multiplied her effectiveness. The program's success had inspired similar initiatives across allied nations, creating an international network of shadow warriors. Ashley stood on the deck of the USS Enterprise, somewhere in international waters that officially didn't exist. She was briefing a group of female special operations candidates from 12 different countries. They weren't trying to become Ghost Unit 7. That designation would always belong to Ashley alone, but they were learning from her experiences, her tactics, and most importantly, her mindset. "The greatest weapon you have isn't your training or your equipment," Ashley told them. "It's the enemy's inability to see you as a threat. They'll underestimate you because of your gender, your size, your appearance. That blindness is a weapon if you know how to use it." Among the candidates was Lance Corporal Amber Hayes, now Sergeant Hayes after exceptional performance in Marine Special Operations. She had earned her place here through blood, sweat, and determination that reminded Ashley of her own journey. "Ma'am," Hayes asked during the Q&A session, "what's the most important lesson you've learned?" Ashley considered the question carefully. That strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about choosing to continue when everything is broken. It's about standing up after being knocked down, not because you have to, but because others need you to show them it's possible. As the briefing concluded and the candidates dispersed, Ashley remained on deck, watching the sun set over the ocean. Her secure phone buzzed with a familiar encryption signature, Phantom again. The Pendleton incident was just the beginning. Are you ready to learn the truth about Ghost Unit 7's origins? This time, Ashley didn't respond immediately. She had spent months investigating Phantom's identity, following digital breadcrumbs and classified records. She had her suspicions, theories that seemed impossible but fit the evidence. Finally, she typed, "Building 7, Coronado, 0300. Come alone." The response was immediate. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out. See you there, sister." Sister. The word confirmed Ashley's most unlikely theory. Ghost Unit 7 hadn't started with her. There had been others before. operators whose existence had been erased so thoroughly that even Ashley, with her highest clearances, had found only shadows of shadows. 3 days later, at exactly 0300 hours, Ashley stood in Building 7 at Naval Base Coronado. The building was abandoned, scheduled for demolition, a fitting place for ghosts to meet. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Ashley's breath caught. The woman looked like an older version of herself, similar height, similar build, but with gray streaking through dark hair and lines carved by years of operations Ashley could only imagine. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Williams, the woman said, using a name Ashley had found in heavily redacted files from the 1990s. No relation, despite the shared surname. I was Ghost Unit 1. The implication staggered Ashley. Ghost Unit 7 wasn't just her designation. It meant there had been 6 others before her. They told me I was the first, Ashley said. They told me the same thing, Rebecca replied with a bitter smile, but we were all the first in our own way. First to survive certain operations, first to break certain barriers, first to prove certain points. And when we became inconvenient, we were erased. But you're still alive. Some of us are. Ghost Units 3 and 5 are running private security in countries that don't officially exist. 2 is in a CIA black site, not as a prisoner but as an instructor. 4 and 6, they didn't make it. Ashley absorbed this information, her worldview shifting. Why reveal this now? Because something's coming. Something that will require all of us, even the ghosts of ghosts. The enemies we face aren't just arms dealers or terrorists anymore. They're systematic efforts to undermine global stability, and they've learned from every operation we've ever conducted. Rebecca handed Ashley an encrypted drive. Everything we learned, every operation we conducted, every sacrifice we made, it's all there. Study it, learn from our mistakes, and prepare. Because what you faced with Volkov was just a test run. The real threat is still positioning itself. As Rebecca turned to leave, Ashley called out, "Wait, if you're all still operational in some capacity, why maintain the fiction? Why not bring ghost units into the light?" Rebecca paused at the door. Because shadows can't exist in the light. The moment we're acknowledged, we lose our greatest advantage, the disbelief of our enemies. Stay in the shadows, Ashley. It's where we do our best work. After Rebecca disappeared into the night, Ashley stood alone in the abandoned building, holding the weight of history in the encrypted drive. She thought about all the women who had come before her, operating in even deeper shadows, facing even greater skepticism, breaking barriers that had seemed unbreakable. The drive contained operational records going back 30 years, stories of women who had infiltrated terrorist cells, prevented nuclear disasters, saved thousands of lives, all while being told they didn't belong in special operations. Each ghost unit had pushed the boundaries further, making it possible for the next to go even further. Ashley returned to her quarters and began reviewing the files. What she found was both inspiring and terrifying. The threats Rebecca had mentioned weren't hypothetical. There was intelligence about a coalition of state and non-state actors working together to create what they called the Great Dissolution, a systematic attack on the international order that would make Volkov's Project Prometheus look like a training exercise. Her secure phone rang. Admiral Chen. "Lieutenant Commander, I assume you've made contact with our former operative?" "You knew about Rebecca?" "I know about all of them. I was the one who recommended you for Ghost Unit 7 after studying their experiences. Each generation learns from the last, becomes stronger, more capable. Admiral, the intelligence Rebecca provided suggests we're facing an existential threat, which is why we're activating all assets, past and present. There's going to be a gathering, the first time all surviving ghost units have been in the same place. We need to coordinate our response to this threat." 2 weeks later, Ashley found herself in a nondescript warehouse in Virginia. Around a table sat 5 women of different ages, different backgrounds, but all carrying the same weight of invisible service. Rebecca Williams, Ghost Unit 1, now in her 50s, but still deadly. Maria Santos, Ghost Unit 2, a former Army Delta operator who had supposedly died in Colombia. Natasha Chang, Ghost Unit 3, who had infiltrated Chinese intelligence and lived to tell about it. Sarah Johnson, Ghost Unit 5, whose operations in Africa had prevented 3 genocides that the world never knew almost happened. 6 extraordinary women, Admiral Chen said, addressing the group via secure video link. 6 shadows who have collectively saved more lives than most conventional military units. Now we need you to work together. The threat they faced was called the Prometheus Coalition, named in honor of Volkov's failed operation. It consisted of rogue military units, extremist organizations, criminal networks, and state intelligence services, all working toward a coordinated attack on global stability, scheduled for 6 months in the future. They've learned from every operation we've conducted, Rebecca explained, displaying intelligence on the wall-mounted screens. They know our tactics, our strategies, our weaknesses, but they still don't believe we exist as a coordinated force. That disbelief is our weapon. Over the next hours, the Ghost units planned an operation that would span 6 continents, involve hundreds of assets, and require precision that bordered on prescience. Each woman would lead a different aspect of the operation, utilizing their unique skills and networks. Ashley would handle North American operations, using her silent shield network to identify and neutralize domestic threats. Rebecca would coordinate European efforts, reactivating old contacts from Cold War operations. Maria would handle South America, Natasha would manage Asian operations, and Sarah would coordinate African efforts. 6 months to save the world, Sarah said with gallows humor. No pressure. As the meeting concluded, Ashley found herself standing with the other Ghost units, looking at a wall covered with photos of operations that had never officially happened, lives saved in secret, threats eliminated in shadow. You know what the hardest part is? Natasha asked. It's not the operations or the danger. It's knowing that everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, will never be acknowledged. Our families think we're desk jockeys or that we're dead. History will never remember us. History doesn't need to remember us, Rebecca replied. We're not doing this for glory or recognition. We're doing it because someone has to stand in the shadows and protect those in the light. Ashley thought about her journey from Camp Pendleton, about Carter throwing her gear in the mud, about all the people who had told her she didn't belong. Now she stood with the most elite operators in American history, women whose existence was barely acknowledged even in classified files. 6 months passed in a blur of operations, each more dangerous than the last. The Ghost units worked in perfect synchronization, their different styles and experiences complementing each other. When the Prometheus Coalition finally initiated their attack, they found every avenue blocked, every asset compromised, every plan countered by shadows they couldn't see or predict. The operation concluded with surgical precision. No massive battles, no public heroics, just the quiet elimination of threats before they could materialize. The world never knew how close it had come to chaos, and that was exactly how the Ghost units preferred it. In the aftermath, Ashley stood once again on the deck of a naval vessel, this time with all the Ghost units beside her. They had prevented a global catastrophe, saved countless lives, and proven that the shadows could be more powerful than any conventional force. So, what now? Ashley asked Rebecca. Now we disappear again, Rebecca replied. Return to our shadows and wait for the next threat, because there's always a next threat. As the other Ghost units departed to their various assignments around the world, Ashley remained on deck. Her phone buzzed with a message from Amber Hayes, now a full Special Operations Marine. Ma'am, just wanted you to know I completed my first classified mission. Can't talk about it, but I thought of your words about strength. Thank you. Ashley smiled. The real legacy of Ghost Unit 7 wasn't the operations or the lives saved. It was the barriers broken, the paths opened, the future operators who would follow in their footsteps. Another message arrived, this one from Admiral Chen. New assignment pending. Are you ready? Ashley looked out at the ocean, thinking about all the shadows that still needed guarding, all the threats that still needed neutralizing, all the barriers that still needed breaking. She typed back, Ghost Unit 7 is always ready. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in those colors, Ashley could almost see the faces of all the women who had come before her, all the Ghost units who had served in shadow so others could live in light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new enemies, new impossible missions. But tonight, standing on the deck of a ship in waters that didn't officially exist, Ashley Williams allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had proven that strength came in many forms, that warriors could emerge from unexpected places, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the world was the one nobody believed existed. The Pendleton incident, as it had come to be known in classified circles, had been the catalyst that changed everything. A moment when assumptions were shattered, when prejudice was confronted, and when a shadow stepped into just enough light to show others what was possible. But the shadows were calling her back now. There would be other incidents, other confrontations, other moments when she would have to choose between staying hidden and standing up for what was right. And Ashley Williams, Ghost Unit 7, would be ready for all of them. As she walked back to her quarters, she passed a group of young female sailors, fresh from basic training, eager to prove themselves in a military that still sometimes doubted their capabilities. They didn't know who she was, didn't know what she represented, but maybe, in some small way, her actions had made their path a little easier. That was enough. That was everything. The shadows awaited, and Ghost Unit 7 answered their call, disappearing once more into the darkness where legends lived and heroes operated without recognition, without glory, but with the absolute certainty that they were the thin line between order and chaos, between safety and catastrophe, between light and the consuming dark. Some warriors are born in light, others are forged in shadows, and a precious few become the shadows themselves, invisible guardians of a world that would never know their names but would forever benefit from their sacrifice. Ashley Williams was one of those few, and her story, like all ghost stories, would never truly end. It would just fade into shadow, waiting for the next time someone needed to be reminded that strength comes in many forms, that assumptions are dangerous, and that sometimes the person you dismiss as weak is the one holding back the darkness. The end, or perhaps just another beginning in the shadows.